I want to thank my patron supporters who are helping me to make more videos like this. If you'd like to be a patron supporter, please go to patreon.com/TJR, the original. The Batman is a 3-hour movie that feels like 2 hours. I wasn't keeping track, but The Batman feels like the most Batman that I have ever gotten in a live-action Batman movie. Most live-action Batman films give about 60% Bruce Wayne and about 40% Batman, and in some cases those numbers feel more like 70-30. The only exception to this rule being the 1960s Batman movie starring Adam West. Excuse me, that's my 10-year-old self calling? Hi, this is me as a 10-year-old. When you're a kid and you go to see a movie called Batman, you want to see Batman in it. You want to see him in costume doing Batman things, not the other way around. That was my 10-year-old self. This is my adult self. In The Batman, Bruce Wayne is kept to a minimum. In fact, there is no sign of the Bruce Wayne persona in this film. I'm talking about the irresponsible, flamboyant playboy living the good life, but of course it's all just an act so that no one suspects that he's really Batman. I'm also talking about the philanthropist businessman running Wayne Enterprises. Over the years, Bruce Wayne has been portrayed as both in comics and in live action and animated films. But this version of the Batman has no use for his life as Bruce Wayne. So when he is out of costume, he is just a shell of a man. His pale emo look that some critics on the internet have been negative of is symbolic of a man whose life outside of the cape and cowl is empty and vacuous until he puts that costume back on. In this film, Bruce Wayne is famous for being a recluse who rarely makes public appearances. And that's because this Batman is a Batman who has not quite figured out who he is yet. To paraphrase Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight, he hasn't figured out that he's not the hero that the city needs. He is driven by rage, who oftentimes yells out furious screams like a child. He believes that fear alone will do the job. And in the film's opening, some criminals do fear just the thought of him and see him as a kind of boogeyman lurking in the shadows, waiting to punish them. But others, like the crime lord Carmine Falcone, sometimes pronounced Falcone, and the Penguin, just laugh at him. But fear is not enough. The citizens of Gotham don't see him as any kind of protector. They see him as just more of the madness that is Gotham City. And this brings us to the villains. Or are they? In this movie, we have 3 of what I refer to as the classic Batman costume villains in this film. The Penguin, the Catwoman, and the Riddler. We also have from comic book canon crime boss Carmine Falcone, sometimes referred to as Carmine Falcone. Catwoman may do criminal things, but then so does Batman by just being a vigilante. Catwoman, aka Selina Kyle, who, by the way, is never referred to as Catwoman by anyone in the film, but who does refer to herself as the Cat, a moniker that the character originally used in her first appearance back in 1940. That was just a little bit of geek cred I wanted to throw out there. Bruce Wayne is motivated by the death of his parents, and like Selina, also operates on a vendetta. The only difference is that he doesn't understand yet that Gotham's criminals are part of a larger infrastructure that the city he wants to protect perpetuates. And this brings us to the Riddler, arguably the film's primary antagonist, but I would say he's not the villain. Just like Batman, he is also a victim of the same corrupt infrastructure that is Gotham City, and he, like Batman, wants payback. But unlike Batman, he knows who the real villains are. Again, Batman thinks it's just the thugs and crime bosses who terrorize Gotham citizens in the way they terrorized and murdered his parents. But the Riddler, and to some extent Selina Kyle, know who the real villains are. Crime boss Carmine Falcone may be the top dog, and the Penguin may be his right-hand man. And yes, they are villains. Batman knows this too. But the Riddler knows that the real villains are the supposedly upstanding citizens of Gotham, the politicians and the police who are supposed to know better, who are supposed to be serving and looking out for the most vulnerable of its citizens. Falcone is the main villain, to be sure, and he is also the quietest and least flamboyant. He's also not putting on any airs of respectability, or at the very least, he's only putting on the faintest of airs. The real villains are all the respectable leaders and lawmen who turned a blind eye in exchange for a piece of the pie. Gotham's politicians, its police, its movers, its shakers could stand up to Falcone, but their silent complicity rewards them with profit and power, so they turn a blind eye. The Riddler knows this, and that is why he starts targeting them. He wants to expose the lies and corruption. Throughout the film, Batman views the Riddler as his adversary. He views the cards addressed to him by the Riddler at all of his crime scenes to be taunts, only to discover by the film's end that the Riddler wasn't taunting him. He was communicating with him in the only way he felt he could. He doesn't view Batman as an adversary. He views him as a kindred spirit, as a teammate. He admires Batman, and he draws inspiration from him. Batman comes to the horrifying conclusion that his reign of terror on Gotham's criminals has inspired an even greater terrorism. And the Riddler decides that his victimization entitles him not just to the murder of corrupt leaders, but to a very literal attempt at washing Gotham City clean and killing innocents as well. And this realization leads Bruce Wayne, the Batman, to finally understand that being a symbol of fear against the city's criminals is not enough. He needs to be a symbol of hope to its citizens as well. And so we have this very symbolic moment at the end, after Gotham has been flooded, of Batman with flame torch in hand, wading through a flooded Gotham City, helping its citizens out of the wreckage to dry ground. There are many things that I liked and didn't like about this film, and I wish I could discuss them all, but this is not that kind of review, and the things I liked outweighed the things I didn't like. But I will talk about this one scene. I think that perhaps this scene could have been expanded on, where we see the other citizens of Gotham being inspired by Batman's actions to do the same and add to his efforts to help their fellow citizens. I think it would have made this scene more powerful, but the meaning is still clear nonetheless. By morning, the National Guard arrives, and Batman is still helping, and there is a great silent moment where someone he has rescued doesn't want to let go of him. This film does a lot of great things with silence, and again, I wish I could discuss them all, but in this one scene, the Batman and Bruce Wayne reconnect with humanity, something that this version of the character had lost sight of. So as I close out this review, I have to say that for the next film to work, none of this can be walked back. In the next film, depending on how much time has passed, we need to see a Bruce Wayne whose reconnection to humanity requires that he be more public, one that takes charge of the Gotham Renewal program that his father initiated and that was plundered by the corrupt, so that it really can help bring real renewal and change to the city. We need to see a Batman who still understands that he needs to be a symbol of fear to the corrupt, but also a symbol of hope to those who walk in light. There is so much more that I would like to say regarding this film, but this review is just what I feel are the film's key points. But real quick, The Batman is an R-rated movie dressed in PG-13 clothing. Its tone feels R-rated, but it never quite goes there by suggesting darker and more disturbing imagery than it actually shows, letting your imagination fill in the blanks. There is so much going on in it, and yet it still manages, for the most part, to successfully balance four primary villains/antagonists and their relationship to the film's title character. This, along with balancing its title character's relations to Jim Gordon, Alfred Pennyworth, and the city of Gotham. As we drove home from the theater that night, my partner told me that she felt the film was relentlessly dark. I felt completely different. I felt it was a film that, through darkness, exposed and expressed a very hopeful message. The Batman is a 3-hour movie that feels like 2 hours, and I had a great time with it, and I hope you did too. Please let me know your thoughts on this review and on the film. I look forward to reading them. As always, if you like what I do, be sure to click like, click subscribe, and smash the bell notification icon so you never miss a video. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. I'm hoping that in the future I might have a chance to talk a little bit more in depth about this film. Thanks for stopping by, and I hope you all stay safe and healthy. Take care.